Welcome to Living a Nutritious Life. I'm Keri Glassman, a celebrity registered dietitian nutritionist. Join me every Tuesday on YouTube and your favorite podcast platforms as I bring in some heavy hitters to share the latest in nutrition and wellness science. We dive deep into food, sleep, stress, relationships, and so much more. Your weekly guide to a happier, healthier, more nutritious life. Are you the friend who's always being asked for health advice? Now imagine turning that passion into a fulfilling career with our Become a Nutrition Coach program. Step into a world where your enthusiasm for wellness becomes the heart of your own thriving business. With me as your professor and guide and coach on our user-friendly digital platform, you can learn from anywhere at your very own pace. It's perfect for your busy life. Envision empowering others to live their healthiest lives, all while growing a career you love. You're not just gaining a certification here, you're joining a community of like-minded professionals ready to support and celebrate with you every step of the way. So what are you waiting for? It's time to nourish your future and help change lives, including your own. Head over to nutritiouslife.com/BNC for a free class and a sneak peek of the program. Your journey to becoming a nutrition coach begins now. You've likely heard about the vagus nerve, but do you really understand what it is and what it is responsible for? If you want to understand the connection between your brain and body, you need to listen into this episode. Welcome. I'm Keri Glassman, your host of Living a Nutritious Life. And in this episode, I sit down with Dr. Navaz Habib, widely known as the Vagus Nerve Doc. Dr. Habib is the author of the best-selling books Activate Your Vagus Nerve and Upgrade Your Vagus Nerve. He's also the host of the Health Upgrade podcast, where he shares valuable insights and practical tips for improving overall well-being. His work emphasizes the importance of understanding and exercising the vagus nerve to reduce stress and inflammation. Today, he shares why the vagus nerve is the linchpin for peak wellness, resilience, and high performance. From boosting your energy and lowering stress and reducing inflammation, improving vagal tone can be a game changer. If you want to truly calm your nervous system and improve your health, you have to know about your vagus nerve. Listen in for Dr. Habib's brilliant insight and actionable tips. And as always, if you love the podcast, please rate, review, and share. Hello, Dr. Habib. How are you today?
I am wonderful. It's so nice to see you, Keri.
I am so excited to talk to you because the vagus nerve is, I think, not only a hot topic right now, and I know, and many people have been asking me questions about it. It's definitely I don't even want to say it's getting its 15 minutes of fame right now, because hopefully it's going to last and it's going to be a lot longer than 15 minutes. But it's also a real personal interest of mine, because when I was getting my degree in nutrition and clinical nutrition, we learned so little about it. And there is just so much to know. Yeah. So with that said, actually, my first question for you is, you've been called the vagus nerve doctor. How did you get so deep into the vagus nerve, into this area?
It's a great question. And it really comes back to my own curiosity. I've always been a bit of a brain buff, neuro kind of guy. I always knew I was going to be interested or kind of go into some form of neuro-supportive care in my world. And the brain always just kind of interested me. And it still does. I'm still very curious. To this point, I've been called the vagus nerve doc. I still know the bare minimum as to what's required to be called the vagus nerve doc. So
no more than all of us. So, there's that.
So the idea for me is it's curiosity and this idea of creating this link, because I think we've done a really terrible job of separating the body out into its different systems and different organs. And the fact that these organs are not connected is kind of this underlying issue that I see. And really, we know that a human can't function without every single organ and organelle and system and cell working together in symphony, in unison. And the ability for the brain to connect to the gut, to connect to the immune system, to connect to the liver and the lungs, it all needs to happen together, right? Like the body needs to work together. And it was this connection piece that really drew me to this idea of, well, how does the brain connect to everything? Because we know the brain is kind of the CEO of the body, as I
Right.
like to say,
Right.
right? It gets all the information and it makes decisions and it sends information down according to the decisions that are going to be made. And if it's not getting good information, it's not going to send out good recommendations. And so where does it get its information from? Well, it comes from every single organ, but it all generally comes through this vagus nerve. And in my own health journey, so I don't know how many people have heard me speak before. This is kind of a generic, but
We want
my
to hear it.
story,
We
yeah,
want
of
to hear it.
course.
We want to hear your story.
When I was in chiropractic school, I weighed 250 pounds. I had high blood pressure. I was borderline diabetic, and this is my early 20s. I was just really in poor health. Like the things that I was learning, I wasn't implementing, and I wasn't aware of what was actually negatively affecting my health. And this idea of disease and then shifting into the idea of what was true health came after chiropractic college. I was introduced to a wonderful friend, someone who you know as well, Sachin Patel. He actually randomly walked into the chiropractic clinic that I was working in, happened to live upstairs, and needed care for his wife. She had been in a car accident, and he introduced me to this idea of functional medicine. And said, "What in the world is functional medicine?" He said, "It's the idea of creating health rather than just avoiding disease." And he taught me this initial concept, and he was the one that introduced me to this, what is health truly coming from? And the underlying thing that I found in every single health-based decision that I was kind of looking at, not only for myself, but in the studying that I was doing, was identifying the fact that in all of these chronic diseases that people are suffering from, there's an underpinning pathway that's constant in every single one, and that is uncontrolled inflammation.
Yep.
And from my own research and my curiosity from before, I realized that the vagus nerve is the pathway by which the brain controls inflammation in the body. It is the connection between the brain and the immune system cells that are present in every single organ of the body. And it was this piece that really helped me link. This is what the job of the vagus nerve is. So you alluded to the fact that we didn't really learn much about the vagus nerve. We really didn't know that much about the vagus nerve for the last, I don't know, up until the last 20 years or so. It was just this discovery more recently by Kevin Tracy and the Feinstein Institute that the vagus nerve is the crux or the linchpin of the cholinergic anti-inflammatory pathway, the pathway by which inflammation is controlled within the body. And so this, based on my curiosity, the timing that this information became available, it kind of aligned, and it helped me to secure this idea that we can control inflammation with our body or within our body by ensuring that vagus nerve signaling is good and strong and functional. And so this was the link that really brought me to understand that vagus nerve is key, and we really need to work to ensure that that nerve is working well, giving our body the ability to regulate our nervous system overall and to downregulate inflammation in every area of our body.
Okay, so let's go back one step. I think many people listening right now probably understand that the vagus nerve is this two-lane highway between the gut and the brain. That's sort of like the basic information that many people know. But beyond that, they don't necessarily know, more about the vagus nerve. So can you just explain, I guess, in layperson's terms, what exactly is the vagus nerve, that two-lane highway, and also why you think, and you sort of just got into this a little bit, but why do you think right now it is having such a moment? I know you just mentioned some of the research, but anything else you want to add on to that?
For sure. I'm going to start with the first misnomer. It is not the vagus nerve. We have two. We
Okay.
have one on the right and one on the left. And even just the name of it, even my books are named Upgrade Your Vagus Nerve.
Yep.
Right? There's two. We've got one on the right and one on the left.
Okay.
They're not symmetrical. They do intertwine with one another when they get below certain areas, but you'll find it literally in your neck by finding your pulse. You're beside your vagus nerve. You're within a few millimeters.
Okay.
So that's a really important factor, because this is a nerve that doesn't follow the same path that every other nerve in the body generally does. It's the only nerve that's found within the carotid sheath in the neck on both sides of the neck. So we have two of them.
Okay.
You mentioned the highway. The highway, actually, I'll call it a 5-lane highway, and 4
Okay.
of those lanes are going up from the organs, and only 1 is going down from the brain.
Okay.
So the vast majority of information that follows through the vagus nerve is going up to the brain. This is the important getting the information of what's happening within the organs, the current
Mhm.
status. So I like to call this, these are the status updates that are going to the brain to tell it what's happening in the liver, what's happening in the lungs, what's happening in the gut, what's happening in
Mhm.
the heart, and sending that information to the brain so the brain can make good decisions and send its information down via the vagus and other nerves, and send that information down to help control the inflammatory activation that's occurring.
Mhm.
The primary cell type, or the primary cell type that the vagus nerve is connecting with, is immune cells, most notably the tissue resident macrophages that are present in every organ of our cell, or every organ of our body. So in the brain, these are the microglial cells. In the lungs, they're the alveolar macrophages. In the gut, they're the intestinal macrophages, which make up around 50 to 60% of all immune cells in the gut right now,
Mhm.
just so you know, or in the body. We have the Kupffer cells in the liver. We've got the Langerhans cells in the skin. We've got the osteoclasts in the bone. These are all tissue resident immune macrophages. These are part of the immune system that you get from mom, and they remain there forever. This is the innate immune system, the
Mhm.
first immune system that shows up in our body. But the way that the immune system connects to the brain is through the vagus nerve. And this is really what the immune system is trying to do. The vagus nerve is unique because it's connected to virtually every organ in our body directly, and has massive connections up into the central nervous system to regulate central nervous system functionality, to get the good information to the brain so we can consolidate, think through, and send information down. So the vagus nerve is important and unique in that particular way. Now, why I think it's having its moment,
Mhm.
I think we're realizing just how important the brain is
Mhm.
in getting this information up. We've been talking for many years now about the microbiome, the gut brain
Right.
axis. How do we get that information up? The vagus nerve. How do we regulate immune system? The vagus nerve. How do we regulate inflammation in the body? The vagus nerve. And when the vagus nerve is not functioning effectively, we can't get that information up. And the body can't make good decisions. The brain can't send good information out. And so we result in these inflammatory health conditions that so many people suffer from. And I think a big piece to this is something that you're very aware of, is this idea of we're living in a metabolic,
Mhm.
like in a serious, significant situation where metabolic issues are massive, right? Like obesity is like 60% of the population. I've suffered with it myself. Like I get this.
Mhm.
I live this. So I understand what that suffering experience is. And when you don't feel full, when you have a meal and
Mhm.
you are now, I think a big piece of this is actually the idea that GLP-1 signaling molecules and GLP-1 medications have become these, you know, it's general public knowledge now. Everybody knows what Ozempic and Wegovy and Mounjaro are. But how do we get those signals to the brain? How does the brain know that there's satiety? How do we know that there's a stretch going on in the stomach because we have enough food? It happens through the vagus nerve.
So you think that some of the GLP-1 medications are reason for people being more aware of just of how the vagus nerve works? Because that's
I think it's helpful on the healthcare practitioner side, because they're starting to realize that healthcare practitioners are saying, well, okay, provide the medication, but why do I need to go to a dose of 2.4 or 5
Mhm.
milligrams? What signaling is there? And I think from the healthcare practitioners that are curious, that are interested in trying to find this out, they're realizing that vagal tone plays a massive role. In addition, I think one of the big things that's happening as well is a lot of people have wearable devices.
Yeah. Oh,
And
I want to get into that with you for
we're
sure.
all we're all interested in this HRV marker, right?
Yep.
And HRV is measuring autonomic nervous system, and vagal tone is a big component to that. So I
Yeah.
think these are all factors in why it's become as important, or well known as it is.
I also think as we know, there's pros and cons to social media. There's the good, the bad, and the ugly with it. And I think one of the good things is sometimes it does make us aware of certain good health trends out there. And I do think there's a lot of talk right now on social media about calming your nervous system
Yeah.
and no one talked about that. Again, when I was getting my degree, when you were getting your degree, no one talked about those things,
No,
right? They didn't talk about calming your nervous system. And the fact that that's just sort of like everyday language now is really a good thing. So
absolutely.
I think that is out there. Okay, so on that note, actually, and I do want to dive deeper into HRV and vagal tone, but I just want to stick with I'm not going to say the vagus nerve anymore. I'm just going to say vagus nerve. Sticking with vagus nerve, how, if you don't have good vagal tone, what are the symptoms that may be showing up in your life? Like, how do you know this?
It's a great question. And really, honestly, there's a few things that people will start to notice that are signs that your vagus nerve is not working correctly. And I have a few tests that I recommend in both of my books
Mm-hmm.
that are great for helping to identify whether you yourself are suffering from vagal tone or a lack of vagal tone. So, number one, and I have a protocol that I kind of have built out, and I think you'll appreciate this. And it's called Vegas,
I appreciate
VAGUS.
all of your work. I think you're just brilliant. All of your work is brilliant. Your books are brilliant. You're brilliant. So I know I'll appreciate it. So, okay, keep going.
I have a wonderful acronym that is Vegas. And so the V stands for validate. And
Mhm.
I'm a big fan of validating what's happening within the body. And HRV is one of the most effective tools that I use in helping to validate whether vagal tone is working or not. So,
Mhm.
symptomatically, what we're going to see is often slow or really fast digestion. So, if digestive issues are prevalent, if you're noticing that you're either constipated, having diarrhea, or you eat and you like have to go to the bathroom immediately, or there's some sort of gastrointestinal issue. SIBO is a very strong link to vagus nerve dysfunction as well. So
Mhm.
excess bloating, especially in that upper abdominal area. We tend to notice that um, people that are suffering from inflammatory health conditions, autoimmune conditions, they have a lot of difficulty regulating their inflammation levels. So that's going to be an important symptom. And one big one that I think is missed out, and unfortunately, when you're suffering with this, it's very difficult to think about this, but it's brain fog, right?
Mm.
It's the lack of ability to have clear cognitive thought. And so you're maybe listening to this podcast and you're like, I kind of get it, but everything seems a little fuzzy and I just can't put my finger on it.
Mhm.
That's brain fog.
Mhm.
And that is a direct sign of inflammatory activation within the brain and the microglial cells and the astrocytes within the brain that are not getting regulatory signals in via vagus nerve. So these are the big three that we tend to notice. And you'll often really notice that you have difficulty falling asleep.
Mhm.
You have a lot of difficulty remaining calm, easily startled. You're kind of on this on edge feeling all the time. This is a very sympathetic fight or flight kind of
Yeah.
activated state all the time. These are the main kind of findings that people are going to experience in this. So if you lack that calmness, if you lack that ability to fall asleep, and I don't know if people understand, but wearable devices with their latency markers, how quickly after you get in bed do you fall asleep? Like if your latency is like more than 30 minutes, we're dealing with something that you're not able to downregulate and shift your autonomic nervous system from sympathetic to parasympathetic. And that nervous system regulation is off. So look for signs like that that
Mhm.
tell us that vagus nerve itself is just not able to send signals as effectively as one might need to. And so that's a big piece of the validation.
Okay. So, wait, are you going to tell us the rest of the acronym or
Absolutely.
or I was about to ask my next question, but then I said, wait, I want to hear the rest of the acronym.
So the A stands for activate, which are the exercises to help enable vagus nerve
Okay.
signaling to occur. The G stands for gut brain optimization,
Okay.
making sure that we're working on diet, nutrition, microbiome, and getting the good signals up to the brain. The U stands for unburden. Look at all of the stressors that your body is experiencing and start to eliminate these stressors from your day to day life, psychological, physical, emotional, and biochemical stressors.
Mhm.
And then S stands for sustain because nobody wants to have to do this over and over and over. How can we make these practices sustainable long-term practices so that they can be there for lifetime health.
I love it. I love the acronym. Okay, so vagal tone, you've mentioned a couple times already. What exactly does that mean? And
Yes.
then how can we improve it if it's poor?
Vagal tone literally means that your vagus nerve has, or how good is the signaling capacity of the vagus nerve,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it's a nerve
Sense.
like any other nerve. So does it have the ability to send signals effectively? Have you trained it effectively to do this? This is based on an idea of neuroplasticity, right?
Yep.
Neuroplasticity is, can you build out nerve signal capacity? Can you build out the connections and make them stronger with practice, with exercise? And
Right.
so vagal tone literally comes down to what is that neuroplastic capacity of the vagus nerve itself? Can it signal from the brain to the body, from the body to the brain effectively?
Right.
So
I mean,
low
it makes
vagal
sense. It's
tone.
sort of like when we
Yeah,
think about like a muscle being toned, it's able to
exactly.
do its job versus being weak. It's able to, so if there's good vagal tone, it's able to do the job it's supposed to do. So it makes total
Exactly.
sense.
Yeah, it's the exact same idea, right? And we can think about it as motor patterns that people have, like a pitcher for a major league baseball team versus an 8-year-old that's trying to throw a ball. You see huge variances, huge differences between their capacity because they haven't trained the nerve and the muscle and all of the nerves and all of the muscles that are involved in ensuring that you're able to throw a 90-mile-an-hour pitch, right? Versus an 8-year-old who's just trying to get their shoulder and their arm moving in the direction to be able to throw the ball. That's a neuroplastic training that needs to be occurring. And so if you haven't trained your vagus nerve with your breathing practices through your life, with your calming centered practices, that there's a bunch of these external stressors that are coming in and decreasing your vagus nerve's capacity to signal effectively, then you're going to train your vagus nerve out of being able to regulate.
So, what happens when you have someone come into your office, and I'm sure you come across these people all the time, and I'm sure there's people listening here that that are saying to themselves, "I am always in fight or flight mode. I feel like I'm always stressed. I don't do any form of meditation. I'm always on edge, or just I've got a lot of stress in my life." What do you suggest to them to start to improve their vagal tone?
I ask them if they're breathing.
Have you ever looked at a skincare product and thought, I wonder if this is actually going to work? I mean, I think we've all done that, right? With OneSkin, I never wonder if it's going to work because I have real proof. Their whole company is led by scientists with backgrounds in tissue engineering, stem cell biology, and skin regeneration. And their products are backed by rigorous lab and clinical studies. The OS1 body is definitely helping my crepey skin, and I'm obsessed with the tinted OS1 Face SPF. It feels like butter going on, and it feels so good knowing that it's moisturizing my skin and protecting it all at the same time. I just love it. At the heart of their topical supplements is their proprietary OS1 peptide, the first ingredient scientifically proven to reverse skin's biological age by targeting cellular senescence. Those are those zombie cells that make your skin age faster than it needs to. Think about that crepey skin that we all want to get rid of. The research on their OS1 peptide has been published in peer-reviewed journals such as NPJ Aging. And not only that, the data for OS1 and their products clearly are listed on their website, so you can learn all about that and the incredible science behind all of their products. In lab studies, they've measured a 130% increase in collagen production with their OS1 eye cream. And another study showed that their SPF neutralizes free radicals. Those are those bad guy compounds that I always talk about, 4 times more effectively than other so-called anti-aging sunscreens. The proof is in the numbers, friends. Try OneSkin and see for yourself. And you can get 15% off your first order with the code Keri, that's Keri, at oneskin.co/Keri. That's oneskin.co/Keri.
Because the breath is the key.
Mm-hmm.
And the answer is always, yes, I'm breathing, but am I breathing correctly?
Mm-hmm.
And the breath really is this underlying and overlooked thing. We take it so for granted, it's kind of
Right.
insane. We breathe between 16 and 23,000 times a day. right? We're doing that breathing pattern consistently, and we won't live if we don't do it. But if we do it in a particular way, we're going to have more positives than negatives. And so the breath pattern that we need to focus on is three things. Your breath pattern should be nasal, diaphragmatic, and longer exhales. Number one, nasal. We don't have teeth in our nose. We don't have nasal hairs in our mouth. We should be breathing through our nose. The nose is meant for breathing. It's your breathing tube is your nose and your eating tube is your mouth. You have a backup if you need it, but it's in case of emergency only.
Right.
It should not be your primary thing to breathe through your mouth. So when we breathe through our nose, we filter the air, we humidify it, we warm it, and we allow clean air to come into our lungs effectively. Number two, diaphragmatic. That means that we are using our diaphragm, which is our primary breathing muscle, which is located below the lungs, but it's not just there for lungs. It's also there to help support the motion patterns of the organs below, the organs in the abdomen, to enable the breath pattern. So when we breathe using our diaphragm, what we're doing is we're creating a vacuum into our lungs and we're expanding the lung tissues as far as we can. That sends a stretch receptor information upload to our brain to say, we are calm. We're getting in lots of oxygen. The lungs are stretching significantly. We're in a great state of calmness, and that helps us to regulate and turn on that parasympathetic rest, digest, recover based system, which is signaled via the vagus nerve. So nasal, diaphragmatic breathing. And then the last piece is longer exhales. So this actually links to HRV, heart rate variability. And we'll get into what that is in a second for those who don't know.
That was actually going to be my next question. So perfect.
Perfect. So we'll lean into that. But let's go into HRV and we'll come back to the breath pattern here. So HRV is the heart rate variability. So there's a difference between heart rate.
I look at it every day.
Every day. Wonderful.
Use it with my Oura ring. Yeah.
Perfect. So when we inhale, what's happening is we are actually turning on our sympathetic nervous system. We're turning on the fight or flight ever so slightly, but it's turning on slightly. And this can be proven simply by if there's a loud sound, a loud bang, a flash, something that is meant to direct your attention to it, you're going to immediately breathe in, get ready to fight or flight, and even just slightly shift towards that state. But when you realize that that threat was nothing, it was a camera flash, it was nothing major to worry about, you go, and you exhale.
Right.
And you spend more time in that exhale, and that helps shift you to parasympathetic mode. Okay. So now as we breathe, this breath pattern actually creates a range in the number of milliseconds between beats of the heart. So as we inhale, our heartbeats get closer together. And our heartbeat is, we're talking beats per minute heart rate, right? So in a 60-second period, how many beats of the heart are there? But heart rate variability looks at the number of milliseconds between beats of the heart. So when we see that there's, 600 milliseconds between these two heartbeats. But then the next one, there's 550. And the next one has 750 milliseconds between these beats of the heart. The real question is, do we want our heart beating like a metronome and having virtually the exact same amount of time between beats of the heart? Or do we want variances? The answer is we want variances. We want to have a higher variability. So when we push the accelerator, when we breathe in, what we're doing is we're bringing our heartbeats closer together, meaning that the number of milliseconds decreases between beats of the heart. But as we exhale, we're separating those beats out and making them further apart. And that means, okay, now there's 700, 800, 900 milliseconds between beats of the heart. What that's doing is it's separating it out and it's creating a variance. It's telling us that we're pushing the accelerator, which is the sympathetics, and then we're pushing the brakes when we exhale, which is the parasympathetics. And that's telling us that we have both systems, both sides of the autonomic nervous system working effectively, creating heart rate variability that's a higher number. The higher your heart rate variability, the more autonomic balance you have. Ability to push both accelerator, sympathetics, fight or flight, and parasympathetics, rest, digest, that's the vagus nerve. So HRV is a sign of autonomic flexibility, autonomic resilience, the ability for the two sides of the nervous system, the autonomic nervous system, to work in balance with one another. If your HRV is low, it usually is telling us that we've made a push heavily towards the sympathetics, that the beats of the heart are so close together and they're not allowed to separate quite as much. And that means that our state is shifted towards sympathetic, that it's almost like our foot is on the gas and we're trying to push the brakes, but they're not working. They're burning out.
Yeah, I think about it as like how resilient you are
100%.
stress and that flexibility and resiliency. That's the part that I think about when I think about HRV. So I think the thing that comes up with HRV when I'm talking about it with people and clients and whomever is that the number, there isn't sort of like this set guideline.
Nope.
And so then I say, well, you want it to be high. And then you're sitting there with a few people and they say, well, my Oura ring says I'm always at around a 50. And someone else says, what? I'm always an 18. Oh my God, am I going to die? And then I say, okay, well, you really want to look at what your average is and then just try to improve upon that. But
Exactly.
A, is that correct? And then B, I guess, what is the cause though for people to be so off? I mean, I know, I guess we could say, well, then that person has poor vagal tone, but what about the person that seems like, they're the least stressed person, why are they always in their mid-20s? Like, where does that starting place of a number come from for people? Because I will tell you, I rarely get above 30.
Okay.
And I always think, well, that's really bad. I got to really work on that. But have I always been like this? Is just the way I operate? If I took away every stressor in my life and practiced my breathing every day, would that improve so dramatically? Like, that's where I get a little confused. And I'd love you to sort of shed some light on all of that.
The answer to the question, what's a good HRV, is better than yesterday.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, that's why I said you got to use your own starting place.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
Okay.
There are way too many factors to factor in here when it comes to what your HRV should be or where it should be or what a good HRV number is. There isn't a good HRV number. Somebody who's trained their whole life, they're an endurance athlete, they've been doing this since they were like 12 years old, and they're, cyclist extraordinaire, runner extraordinaire, and they're capable of recovering very quickly because they've trained that capacity from a very young age, is generally going to have a higher HRV than somebody like me, who unfortunately lived a relatively sedentary life for 20 some odd years and didn't put in the effort and the fitness capacity and build up that resilience to the same level.
Well,
right?
I got to ask you, what's your HRV? Your normal?
I generally sit around 50, 55. That's where I am on average. But I have days, but that's the key thing. It's not better than yours. It's just a higher number. There's not better. And you got to make sure that you're not comparing your HRV to somebody else's, because it's very disheartening when you do that, because you're like, damn it, I'm doing everything right and I'm still in my 30s.
And I played sports my whole life. I was a trained athlete for many years. Why is my HRV so bad? Okay.
The key thing that I'll say is the biggest factor that causes HRV levels to drop as quickly as they do is the accumulation of stress. And so we have to look at all types of stress here. We need to look at physiological stressors, day-to-day kind of, biochemical stressors from the microbiome being a certain way, dietary stuff, right? We need to look at physical stressors. Were you overtraining potentially? Were you pushing yourself too hard when you were younger? Right? Physical sedentary lifestyles are going to generally result in lower HRV numbers. There's genetic factors. There's emotional stressors of day-to-day life of, I had kids and my HRV dipped pretty significantly. And these are things that happen. And then were you maybe the victim of a crime when you were younger? Or did you have childhood stressors like adverse childhood events that play a major role in dropping vagal tone? So these all accumulate. They all build up and they lower the tone or the capacity of the vagus nerve to signal, and that results in a lower autonomic flexibility. That said, when we look at that number is just an average of what you were doing during the night. It's not actually telling us about the coherent pattern of up and down.
Right.
So it's a great average number, and it's a good place to know where you're at relative to yesterday, but the pattern that's there is actually far more important. The HRV balance number on your Oura ring is far more important to note than the HRV number itself.
Wait, say that one more time though. So the HRV balance number?
Exactly. And they don't do it by a number, but they do it by, were you flowing sympathetic, parasympathetic
in
a cyclic manner through the night, or was it just a rigid up and down chaos without any
Okay.
rhyme or reason. And if you were doing it in a nice flowed pattern, you'll notice that marker of HRV balance says you were good or high or excellent. That's telling us that you were going in and out of sympathetic, parasympathetic effectively. And that's more important for autonomic resilience than just the average HRV number on a nightly basis.
And if you do all these things to improve your vagal tone during the day, when you sleep, I'm assuming that then your body will be functioning better, that you will then wake up and have a better number, correct?
You may have a better number, but you will likely and more often than not have a better HRV balance.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
So the number is going to not move as quickly as most people want, but the actual balance marker is what you want to work on maintaining in a very positive manner.
Okay. So I want to get off HRV for a moment and kind of go
Totally.
back to something that you were talking about again, the beginning of the conversation. You were talking about your vagus nerve and inflammation. And we know that inflammation is the cause of neuronal degeneration, heart disease, cancer. I mean, every chronic condition really relates to or stems from some form of inflammation. So can you, now that I think everyone listening hopefully has a little bit of a better understanding of vagus nerve, can you connect those dots between vagus nerve and inflammation?
Totally.
And yeah, because I'd love to go back there and dive a little bit deeper into that.
I like to visualize this with a tree image, one that
Mm-hmm.
Sachin actually had created early on. And the idea here is we've got a tree that we see above the ground, and then below the ground level, we see the soil and you see the roots of the tree kind of coming out. And so we've got all these roots and we've got all these root causes. So labeled in there is genetic predisposition, environmental stressors, poor diet, sedentary lifestyle, microbiome dysbiosis, all of these root causes, things that trigger an inflammatory or sympathetic reaction. These are stressors that, when accumulated to a negative extent or to an almost incapable extent, are going to trigger an inflammatory response.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And I like to think of the trunk of the tree as chronic uncontrolled inflammation. And what happens is, as you go through that inflammatory process that are triggered by the accumulation of these root causes, we result in the leaves of the tree popping up. And the leaves of these trees are the diagnoses that we see in day-to-day life. Right? Mm-hmm. So we see the obesity, the diabetes, the cardiovascular disease, the autoimmune condition, the you name it, every chronic health condition that we are dealing with these days, those are what we see, and that's what is diagnosed. Mm-hmm. So the conventional medical system does a great job of identifying the leaves and telling us what's going on the leaves side.
Right.
The functional medicine pathway is great at identifying these root causes and helping to understand what's causing the inflammation in the first place. But that missing piece is the inflammation itself, mm-hmm. right? That common trunk between root cause and disease. And it's the job of the vagus nerve to control inflammation within the body. So the way that this works is the vagus nerve utilizes only one neurotransmitter total, and that is acetylcholine. Mm-hmm. Acetylcholine is produced from acetyl-CoA, which is, mitochondrial function, really important. Good carb and fat metabolism is going to help support acetyl-CoA production. And that's necessary in the Krebs cycle in the mitochondrial energy pathways. But acetyl-CoA is also necessary for producing acetylcholine. Acetyl-CoA gets plugged together with choline that comes from dietary sources. Mm-hmm. It's not an essential nutrient, but it's one that we take in. About 90% of people have a deficient choline diet. Mm-hmm. So we need to get choline into our diet so that choline can get paired with acetyl-CoA and produce acetylcholine as the neurotransmitter that the vagus nerve utilizes exclusively. Acetylcholine, when we get enough of it and we're signaling effectively with the vagus nerve, goes out and attaches to a receptor on every single immune cell that has this receptor, which is every immune cell plus a bunch of others. And that receptor is called the alpha-7 nicotinic acetylcholine receptor. Alpha-7 nicotinic acetylcholine receptor. And what happens is acetylcholine will bind to that receptor and trigger 3 different pathways within the cell. Number one, it's going to activate the CFOS pathway, mm-hmm. and that's going to downregulate inflammatory cytokine activation. So the cell is no longer going to, at the nuclear level, at the protein DNA level, stop to upregulate these inflammatory signaling molecules, these cytokines. That's a really important pathway. There's the NF-kappa B pathway, another pathway to the genetics to produce inflammatory cytokines. Both of those pathways are going to be deregulated, downregulated. So we're going to have less of these signals going out. The third pathway actually goes to the mitochondria and upregulates mitochondrial activation. So it allows the mitochondria to function more efficiently. And it tends to happen when we're not overloaded with carbohydrates, more so utilizing fats as our energy source. So we want balance. I'm not necessarily pushing towards a ketogenic specific diet or a high fat diet, but you want to have the idea of, can you utilize the mechanisms or the machinery for fat burning more effectively, because there's less reactive oxygen species that are going to build up in the mitochondria with a fat productive diet than a carb productive diet. So cycling is what I'm a big fan of. Now, acetylcholine downregulates the inflammatory cytokine activation and downregulates the release of the mitochondrial DNA, which then results in cellular health being maintained. And it essentially decreases the inflammatory signaling that is generally produced by those immune cells. So it downregulates inflammation through those specific genetic and mitochondrial pathways if you have enough vagal tone and enough acetylcholine signaled out.
Okay, so you had talked about breathing before and the importance of breathing properly, and then we switched to HRV, and this conversation now just reminded me. I wanted to go back to that because you had mentioned the breath, breathing in through the nose. You'd mentioned the diaphragm, and then we got on to HRV, but I want to hear the rest of that because I know that the breath work is a huge part of our vagus nerve doing what it's supposed to do. One of which, what you just mentioned, down-regulating the inflammation.
Yeah. So the last piece, so we talked about the breath being nasal, diaphragmatic, and longer exhales.
You thought I was going to forget about that.
I almost did myself. So we know that we want to breathe through our nose, using our diaphragm more effectively. And we talked about HRV being when we have more exhale time. So when we spend more time on the exhale, more parasympathetic time, that's going to increase HRV, and that's going to increase the number of milliseconds that we spend in a long interbeat interval. So essentially, it's going to extend out the variability number. So your HRV goes up when your breath is nasal, diaphragmatic, and longer time in exhale.
Okay, so that was That was the third part there, was the longer time. Okay, got it. All right, just wanted to make sure and clarify that for people. Okay.
So in practice, the way that we make this work is we do breath patterns that are 3 seconds inhale, 6 seconds exhale, or 4 seconds inhale, 7 second hold, 8 second exhale. That's a 4-7-8 breath. I'm a big fan of that one. So you want to have less time on the inhale, more time on the exhale, and where possible and where you feel comfortable, add in some pauses, some slowing it down. Slowing our breath pattern down helps to drive HRV up, increased vagal tone, brings us back and centered into our body. So even something as simple as a box breath of 4-4-4-4 is going to help produce that because it's slowing the breath rate down.
Yeah.
Breath rate is huge.
I sometimes recommend to people that really have never done any sort of breath work like this, or have never meditated and really are in that constant kind of stress, fight or flight mode. I sometimes even just recommending setting a timer for 3 minutes or 5 minutes and just breathing, but just focusing on breathing itself. Just
100%.
The only thing you're doing is breathing. And sometimes that's even a place just to get people to start.
Yes.
Okay. So aside from the breath work, what else do you recommend to improve our vagal tone, to improve how well our vagus nerve functions?
These are great questions. I dig into these with a lot of depth in both of my books.
Okay.
But the idea is...
We're going to put those in the show notes, by the way, for everyone.
Totally. Anything that helps with vocalization, and it's all tied to breathing patterns. Can you help to regulate that breath more effectively? So humming, chanting, gargling, singing in the shower, singing in the car, do that. It's actually good for you.
Wow.
Right? These are great tools because, you sing, you belting out, I don't know, Taylor Swift in the car with my 2 daughters. That's what we're listening to these days. And
I love
you're
it.
belting it out and you're feeling good and calm and you're relaxed and you're happy
So good.
and that's actually a sign that you're turning your vagus nerve on, right? Being able to express your emotions, crying when you need to cry, smiling and breathing calmly when you need to, right? Spending time with loved ones. Like laughter is phenomenal for vagus nerve health. And, loneliness, we've talked about this many times with many other people, but loneliness is this massive epidemic that even though we're connected to everybody in the world through our computers, we're less connected physically
Mm-hmm.
than we have been. And so spending time with people one-on-one or in small groups, excuse me, is very, very important in enabling that vagus nerve shift as well. I'm also a fan of, for those who are capable and willing and interested, cold plunges are great ways to shift it, but it's all based on your breath. Are you breathing in a calm, resilient fashion, even while you're under the stress of a cold plunge?
Yeah, so I have a question about that with the cold plunge. Is that the real main benefit of it? So, and I love all these different wellness tools. Like this cold plunging is one that I've really had a tough time with.
Yes.
I just have a tough time. It is not my favorite. I mean, I love so many of these things.
If it stresses you out, it's actually worse for you. So I wouldn't do it if it's causing you stress.
Good excuse for you now not to do it, because it's like I want to like it and I just have a tough time with it. But my question with it is, are the real benefits that come from it how you have to focus on your breath to get through it? Or there are these other benefits as well? Or would you say that's
for me, the main benefit by far is that breath focus.
Okay.
And
that's what I thought.
Just be like, nothing puts you in your body greater than your body being in a stressful environment, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like getting into a cold plunge, nobody likes getting into a cold plunge. Everybody hates it, but everybody who comes out of a cold plunge and does so in a somewhat successful manner feels phenomenal because they spent time in a breathing pattern that enabled them to live through a stressful experience and come out unscathed on the other side. I think that's really the mental piece to it. Plus the breath piece is so powerful.
Right.
Not to mention the fact that we live generally in indoor environments. We're not living in temperature control is so significant these days. We're not experiencing extreme hots and extreme colds generally. So we're very comfy. We're comfy. Exactly. Yeah. And when we're overly comfortable, we're not allowing hormetic stressors to kind of come in and push us into periods or situations of less comfort. We really want to focus on improving your stress resilience by engaging in these environments that are less comfortable, but coming out and knowing that you can come out unscathed, and teaching your body and teaching your brain how to come out unscathed and how to breathe through those patterns to enable that parasympathetic feeling, even when it's a situation that should theoretically put you into a sympathetic fight or flight state. It's training. And that's the neuroplastic approach here is, can you train the vagus nerve to turn on even when you're in these stressful environments?
Oh, wow. It's super, super interesting. And I think one of the things that's most sort of, to me, inspiring about all of this is that there are all these things that we can do on a daily basis that don't involve taking, I mean, I love supplements, but they don't involve necessarily taking another supplement or going somewhere to try some new wellness tool. It's really things that we can just do for free in our bedroom or anywhere. Just like, I mean, like you said, like the breath work is the most important part of it, or just spending time with people you love, or all of those things. So, and it can have such a great impact. And like you said, it's something that, it's almost like it's something that's so basic, like our breathing, that we don't think about. And so we haven't been nurturing it, and it does cause a lot of problems when we don't nurture it properly. But if we focus on it and we're intentional about it, we can really reap so many rewards from it.
Yeah, no question about it. You mentioned it kind of at the top of the call here, that the vagus nerve, we've had vagus nerves for as long as humans have been around.
Right.
Why is it only getting its 15 minutes now? It's because we finally understand it, right? We finally understand just how important that connection is. And we're realizing that if we've pushed so far into comfort zone, that we're actually decreasing our ability to handle stress. And now we need to make that change.
So a couple last questions here for you. and I know we'd already talked about a couple things that people can do, like the breathing, the breath work, and then you mentioned the cold plunging. If everyone listening started doing one tiny little micro action daily to support their nervous system, what would be that one thing you suggest?
There's no question in my mind. It's taking time to get into your breath and give your body an opportunity to recover. This is particularly important either to bookend your day, begin and end your day, or post some sort of stressor. It can be a hormetic stressor. I do it after my workouts. I go and lay down on the mats at my gym, and I'll do 5 minutes of calm 4-7-8 breath, get myself back into my body, get myself back into my breath pattern and slow it down and work to recover from the stress of doing a workout. So that's going to be a big one for sure.
And that's important for people to know, because I think people just go from one thing to the next. And I think like even with their meditation, I got my meditation and now I got to go get on this call. I got my this and I got to go. So like,
don't tell me you weren't thinking about your call during your meditation if that's how you're going through, right? You need to create these transitions and these opportunities to shift sympathetic to parasympathetic.
Yeah.
So breath is key for that.
Okay. Yeah, that's really, really smart. I like that winding down just after the workout even. That's really good. Okay. What's next with all of this research? I mean, I know you have these incredible books out there, which again, you can share those now with everyone, but I also will put those in the show notes. But aside from that, what are you doing next as far as research? Like, what are you most excited about as it relates to the vagus nerve and the nervous system?
I think the biggest thing that I'm excited about is vagus nerve stimulation. Electrical, ultrasound based, just tools that people can utilize in therapeutic manner to help support their sleep, support their energy, support their recovery processes, creating that shift. We can't heal when we're stuck in sympathetic state. And there's a lot of people that the breath just isn't enough, right? Like we want to be able to create that shift, but sometimes we need a little bit of a push in the right direction to help create that shift more effectively. Vagus nerve stimulation is a tool that I've used therapeutically with a lot of patients. The results are astounding. How quickly
is that
people
like
are able to shift.
what is
Truvega is a great tool.
called?
There's another one that I'm testing out right now called ZenBud, which is awesome. So it's an auricular based ultrasound type, which is really, really interesting. Very, very promising research on that particular device. In 5 minutes daily, they saw significant improvement in things like PTSD in 12 weeks. So
wow.
Just phenomenal devices and technologies that people can incorporate into their practices just during those bookends, right? Where you would normally just practice breath work. What if you could do breath work plus stim, breath work plus ZenBud time or something along those lines? So I'm a big fan of that and seeing how we can help shift the care of autoimmune and chronic inflammatory patients that are dealing with these significant struggles. The biggest change that I see with one of these devices, any one of them, is improvements in sleep. Getting to sleep and staying asleep and remaining asleep through the night. And that is, if you're sleeping well, everything tends to fall into place. Right?
I was just going to say, then every other aspect of your health generally improves.
Totally.
So if you can fix your sleep, I mean, that's fabulous. Okay. This has been so enlightening. I could talk to you for hours and hours. I love your work and everything you're doing. Tell us where to find you, your books and all that. Like I said, I'll put it in the show notes, but why don't you share as well?
Absolutely. I've got Upgrade Your Vagus Nerve, which is the new one. It's been out for just over a year now. So that one is available everywhere. The first one is Activate Your Vagus Nerve. That one's doing really well. It's almost 100,000 copies sold, which is amazing.
Wow.
On that one. So feel free to check out whichever one resonates with you. If you're looking at books, you can find me on the Health Upgrade podcast, myself and JP. JP is actually the guy who invented the Truvega device. So JP, who's my co-host. Wonderful conversations with him on that, plus wonderful guests. And you can follow me on Instagram at Dr. Navaz Habib.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Very last question for you. What do you do on a daily basis to ignite your nutritious life?
I'm going to take a shift here and say, what do I do on a monthly basis?
Okay.
On a monthly basis, I do a 72-hour fast every month. to get my body into a recovery autophagy zone and give myself the time to recover, give my gut a break from constantly consuming, putting things in. And I think that's awesome. And I hydrate like crazy as part of that. So I'm not doing it today, but I make sure to maintain that hydration. But that 72-hour fast once a month has been an absolute game changer for me in every way.
I'm assuming you put electrolytes in your water.
100%.
Just making sure.
Of course.
Okay, amazing. Wow, that's super. We have to do a whole podcast on that. I want to hear about your fasting next time. Okay, amazing. This has again been so incredible. Thank you so much for your time. And everyone, go check out Dr. Habib's books and his Instagram. And again, thank you so much.
Have you ever looked at a skincare product and thought, I wonder if this is actually going to work? I mean, I think we've all done that, right? With OneSkin, I never wonder if it's going to work because I have real proof. Their whole company is led by scientists with backgrounds in tissue engineering, stem cell biology, and skin regeneration. And their products are backed by rigorous lab and clinical studies. The OS1 body is definitely helping my crepey skin, and I'm obsessed with the tinted OS1 face SPF. It feels like butter going on, and it feels so good knowing that it's moisturizing my skin and protecting it all at the same time. I just love it. At the heart of their topical supplements is their proprietary OS1 peptide, the first ingredient scientifically proven to reverse skin's biological age by targeting cellular senescence. Those are those zombie cells that make your skin age faster than it needs to. Think about that crepey skin that we all want to get rid of. The research on their OS1 peptide has been published in peer-reviewed journals such as NPJ Aging. And not only that, the data for OS1 and their products clearly are listed on their website, so you can learn all about that and the incredible science behind all of their products. In lab studies, they've measured a 130% increase in collagen production with their OS1 eye cream. And another study showed that their SPF neutralizes free radicals. Those are those bad guy compounds that I always talk about, 4 times more effectively than other so-called anti-aging sunscreens. The proof is in the numbers, friends. Try OneSkin and see for yourself. And you can get 15% off your first order with the code Keri, that's KERI, at oneskin.co/Keri. That's oneskin.co/Keri.